to me.
And I'm very conscious as well, Mick, in asking you that question, that I know Anne died in April 2011, but the burial was this morning, so it's another milestone and another difficult period. And I know anyone who read, you've written very, very movingly about Anne's passing on your blog and various other places, and they'll get a clear understanding of the depth of loss that you are enduring. So I appreciate you talking to us, especially on the day that your wife was actually formally buried. Mick Nugent, thanks indeed. Mick, and I know from following you and other programmes that you're involved now with Tom Curran, Mary Fleming's partner, in lobbying for legalised assisted dying.
Yeah.
Where does that stand at the minute?
Well, that was one of the things that was very important to Anne when she was dying. She didn't want to die, but she wasn't afraid of dying. But what she wanted to avoid was undergoing unnecessary suffering before she died. And because of that, she had made preparations with the assistance of our advice from Tom, to be able to take her own life if she needed to. And I had agreed to help her to do that if she was going to. And the thing about that, Joe, is it's not about the act of dying. It's about the extra quality of life you get while you're still alive, from knowing that you have the option of missing out on unnecessary suffering. And Anne died naturally in the end. And in fact, most people who do make preparations to take their own life if they need to do end up dying naturally, because it's not done because they want to die. It's done because they want to have they know that they have the option to end suffering if they need to. There's now some legislation being put together by a combination of some legal people and people in the Oireachtas, and we're hopeful that we'll have something coming before the Oireachtas before the end of this year.
But Michael, and I don't want any detail about what the plan was, but you say you were prepared to assist Anne.
Yeah.
But that's a crime in Ireland, as you know.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and I would have been prepared to take the consequences if I had to do that, and there were consequences.
There are serious consequences, Mick, in Ireland.
Yes, there are, and I think it's important that if you are prepared. But I have always obeyed the law. And I think it's important that people obey the law. And but if there is something of such magnitude where you're talking about somebody dying and avoiding unnecessary suffering from somebody that you love at no harm to everybody else, then you're in a position where your compassion and your empathy and your desire to prevent suffering is in contradiction to the law. Then I think you should be prepared to stand by your conscience, but you should also be prepared to then take the legal consequences of that if there are any. So obviously I'm relieved.
Yeah, but Mick, the other side of that conversation was surely Anne saying to you, Mick, if you do this, if you help me, if this situation arises, and as you say it didn't, but you were prepared and had agreed.
Yes.
But if you help me, you will suffer. You could end up in prison. Actually, it was more likely you were going to end up in prison under the current legislation. But surely surely one of the things she said to you, or that you discussed, the two of you, was, well, what's the point in you going to prison if I'm, you will have suffered enough, and why should you incur even more pain by ending up in prison?
Well, obviously,
I'm saying, okay, let me put it another way. It makes sense. Who was the driver in this plan?
Well, Anne was, because it was her that was dying. But what we did say to each other, and the way we did discuss that particular dilemma that you're talking about, and what enabled us to get through that is knowing that if it had been the other way around, and if it had been me that was dying, that Anne would have wanted to help me. Regardless of the consequences. And whatever consequences, I mean, if you were to spend whatever amount of time in prison, that involves less suffering than undergoing intolerable pain unnecessarily while you're dying. And the thing is, Joseph, when you're dying, things like what the law says and so on become less important to you in terms of the immediate issue that you're dealing with. Is that either you or or your loved one, depending on which perspective you're looking at it, is facing the possibility of unbearable pain and suffering when they're going to die anyway, when it's not a question of if they're going to die. Anne had a terminal illness. She knew for a certain fact that she was going to die soon, and the only question was whether or not she had the peace of mind of knowing that she had the option of avoiding the suffering if it became unbearable.
And your point, the consensus the two of you came to was that the avoiding of that suffering was worth whatever other, and obviously another type of suffering or pain inflicted on you if you had been charged and sent to prison.
Exactly, yeah, okay. Exactly, because, well, that's, I mean, what everybody will identify with who is in love with somebody is that when you're in love with somebody, that avoiding that suffering for that person is far more important than anything else. That's how love works, you know, when two people are in love with each other. So I mean, it would have been a very small sacrifice to have to make, and the, you know, given the alternative of going, no, I'll just watch my wife die in unbearable agony, and then wander around happily thinking, "Oh, great, I've avoided prison."
But the other thing is, and I don't want to know anything more in terms. But did Anne leave a letter saying that she had consented if it had progressed the way you didn't hope it would progress, and thankfully it didn't? Did Anne leave a letter of exoneration or agreement or? Well,
she had been interviewed. While she was dying, she had been interviewed by RTE for a television programme about assisted dying and about people who are terminally ill. So she was on record publicly as saying that, and as had I. Like, we didn't make any secret about it, and one of the things that Anne felt was important, both about her dying and about her plans for assisted dying, and about the fact that she had cancer, is she wanted to help to normalise discussions about those things. So she was quite open about saying, look, I want people to talk about the fact that I have cancer. I want people to talk about the fact that I'm dying. I don't want it to be something that's hidden away. So she was on record on RTE before she had died.
But that other element, Mick, of where did she leave a letter saying myself and Michael have agreed that if we came to a certain situation that he would assist me, and I want to say we made this agreement when I was in the full of my senses?
Yeah, well, there were a few things. We had told our oncology doctor. We had told any number of friends, and we did that documentary with RTE, in which we had effectively the same conversation as we're having now, except then it would have been in the future, where Anne was saying that she had made preparations to take her own life, and I had said that I was prepared to help her. So we were literally on record with RTE saying that before she had died.
Yeah. Again, condolences on Anne's passing, and thanks indeed for your contribution.
Thanks, I really appreciate your sensitivity on this.
Thanks, you're very kind. Thank you, Mick.